have some time for questions and answers. Martin.
Tom, the French version of XENON has a male voice, which is very, very bad. It's just the most crappiest voice ever. Why the hell did the French people want that?
One, the French always want something unique and different. Georges Santa-Maria, who ran Bally in France, huge buyer. I can't imagine, I mean, he would have no access to change the voice. So, are you telling me all the machines that went into France had a different voice?
I'm quite sure, because I fixed many for these French people. I fixed the games and programmed Suzanne's voice into it, because now the collectors, they
sure,
like
that's what they want.
They would make their own changes in France. They had their own equipment. Change their own, do their own audio.
Bally France, you're telling me Bally France had the ability to alter this audio for the game?
Yes, they would create their own programs.
And it's too bad that I did not bring it, because it's so bad. It's just incredible.
George's sons are still alive, and I think in the business, I see them occasionally, Frank and Christophe, and I will reprimand them. They must have knocked it off, because the French would get some of the very earliest shipments, so they could sell them into Germany first and get the most money, and then they'd fill their own backyard. So we were constantly negotiating that little battle. But there was never, I know of absolutely no conscious authorization so that they would, the only thing along that lines I know of is graphically, and that was on the KISS game where the SS's were changed. Imagine that. To the soft S, not the hardest.
Okay, next question. Over there, gentleman in the hat.
For Suzanne, when you were recording all the sounds and such, did you compile a bunch? Were you able to go in and apply them to the game and test and rearrange? Or was that given to the design team, and then how was the final package arrived at?
Well, all the sounds that I did were within the parameters of the chip, so I knew they would work in the chip. So I just replicated the chip in my computer, and also all my sounds would go right in. The voice, I had limitations on the amount of space. I can't remember how, it was not big, so thus a lot of those short, punchy voice sounds. And that was a strict sampling, so I just had to be very aware of the time, you know, that everything would fit on the chip.
But the things that we heard that didn't fit the game, did you go in and try those and say this doesn't work, or did you?
Oh, try them in the game?
Yeah,
No. I just did it by imagination.
So you kind of had a composition and then took it in and gave it to them, and that was it.
Yeah, I had sounds for the things that they wanted. You know, they said, now we need a disappointing sound that's this long, or about this long, you know, that means this. Or, you know, now we need a sound for when they launch the ball. And so I would look at a game and see how long it took to launch a ball, and, you know.
Most of the disappointing sounds came out of the competitors, though.
Okay, gentleman in the blue shirt.
How long did it take for you to do your work? Yeah, how long did it take for you to do your work? How many months?
Oh, months. I didn't do anything over months. I had ran an emergency room. That's what I called it in New York. People would call and they needed something the next day. And if somebody called and said, we'd like to book you for next week, I'd say, well, call back when you're ready. You know, it's like, so I was used to this incredible intensity in production, and I had a good staff.
Long hours.
Long hours. Yeah, it was done pretty quickly.
Next question.
Yes, this question is, I guess, largely for Suzanne, but maybe the entire team as well. Every once in a while, there's a pinball machine, or very rarely there's a pinball machine that starts something that every pinball machine after that copies. Like, for instance, I think of High Speed with the habit trails that bring the ball back to the flippers. And after watching this, which I've seen many times before, and after comments that my wife and I make when we play our pinball machines at home, I believe it's possible that you guys have a first with XENON, which is that sound when the ball goes in the out lane that everybody makes, and I know that you did that consciously. And ever since then, every game that we play that has sound includes that type of sound. Was that something you guys were aware of? And Suzanne, do you know that you probably started that?
Which sound was that?
So the sound when the ball goes out the out, when it's drained, when it goes out the out lane. And you mentioned that you consciously came up with that sound, that grunt that's disappointing. And every game today has that sound. I mean, it's their own version of that sound, but it's that concept.
That's very cool. See, I would never have known that, since I only know one
Does
game.
everybody agree with me on that, on the sound that I'm talking about? And it just occurred to me that this was the first game that did that.
Wow, thank you for that.
Was that conscious? Did you guys?
It started with games like Rolling Stone and a few others where they, Kiss I believe had that, where they actually tried to put a custom sound to the outline. It's just that on XENON, we had such a good library of unique sounds to work with, but the idea of customizing a sound to a particular ball position, we actually started that back when Rolling Stones came out, and I think Kiss may have been the first game to have a customized owl sound.
Got another question?
I've got a question for Martin in Germany. You had mentioned something about the voice work being a man's voice. Was the choreography and the voice, was it all the same, but just a different voice?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's not only on XENON, also for Flash Gordon, for example, they did the same. They brought in a
Okay.
French voice.
We have a local operator that's a pinball repair guy that's been in the business for, I don't know, probably 30 years. And he had a Squawk and Talk game. I don't remember what game it was, 8-Ball Deluxe or something like that, but it used the Squawk and Talk game. And he had one that had a weird pitched voice in it as well. And what he found on it, on the Squawk and Talk game, was it was I don't know what exactly the position of it was on the board, but one of the capacitors had a different value on it, which gave it a different pitch. He corrected that capacitor on that Squawk and Talk game, and it fixed the problem. So I
He
just
thought he had a rare collectible there, did he?
Okay. Can I ask Paul a question? When you were doing the original art for XENON, particularly the back class, what media were you using? What media were you using?
That's actually primarily acrylic airbrush. I use a lot of airbrush in that piece. And,
Okay. And where is that today, that original piece?
the original piece, and actually the one that's here is not the original, it's a translate of the original. I had pulled the original painting out to bring to this fine event tonight. And I've been here before and I've talked about this, but there was a period of time when we had moved into new offices at Bally Midway. And my office wasn't even set up yet. I just had taken several of the original pinball paintings and leaned them up against the wall, getting ready to store them in the flat files when they were going to be brought into my office. This was over the Christmas period, so very cold. They had the sprinkling system in the new office froze because the heat went off, broke, flooded the offices, and several of those pieces that were on the floor got wet up to about 3 inches up the painting. And I was going to bring the painting today, because it still exists, it's still fine, except the lower 3 inches of it has to be kind of relaminated very carefully, and there wasn't really time to do that. So I still have the original XENON, and it looks very similar to this. It's a little bit larger than the translate is there. But luckily, I mean, nothing has disturbed because it was acrylic, which is a good thing. Nothing disturbed the paint itself. It's just that it's, because it was done on a piece of illustration board, it's all laminated paper on top of cardboard, and it's just kind of delaminated. So I'm going to actually take the time to fix that now that I realize that it's actually got a little bit more delaminated over time as you store it. So that's the one reason I didn't want to take the chance of taking it out.
Okay. Have you seen the drawing of XENON that's in the hallway?
Yes, I have. I actually did that drawing, and I mean, and I have to, that's the first sketch I did to kind of create the woman of XENON. And I was sort of surprised, I think it was 2 years ago when I was sitting at the autograph session, a gentleman came up and had a t-shirt with that artwork on it. And I had never had, I'm thinking the whole time that drawing is in my flat file in my studio. And what happened was that when I left Bally, I took quite a bit of the work with me, but some of that was left in cabinets that I think eventually this particular gentleman bought a lot of that work, and that was one of the pieces in there. It's just on a piece of tracing paper, but where I designed the first face for XENON, and that's, so to see it coming back and see it on a t-shirt that I didn't know that somebody else had that artwork, so I went back and looked in my drawers, and sure enough, he had it.
Can I ask that next time you pass that piece, can you autograph it for us so that we can put it in the charity auction on Saturday night?
The one that's, do we make a poster?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great, thanks very much for that. Okay, more questions from the floor. Dave again.
This is probably for Greg, and you can toss it whichever way you have to. It's more of a detailed question about the sound. So we heard in the documentary that there was 5 seconds, and I've got all the speech calls here. Who would handle the cutting and pasting kind of thing? You've got XENON 2, and then there's XENON exit 1, exit 2. So there's a possibility of reusing syllables there. Did you have Suzanne do that? Did you do that? The sound guy? How did you work out cramming in by reusing the syllables?
Well, with only 5 seconds available, that question can be answered by Al, technical guy.
So we had, you all know, Ray Merchant headed up the project, and there was another engineer there, Bob Cohen, and Bob and Ray.
Bob and Ray.
They literally locked themselves in a room and figured out what would go in and what would go out. So we had this library of sounds, chopped it up into pieces, and if it didn't fit, they sped it up. And if it sounded cool, slow down, they would slow it down. But they did all that. You wouldn't even use the terms cutting and pasting in those days. I don't know what they would call it, but that's Bob and Ray probably did all that editing and
did they have the ability to play it back at more than one speed, so that one cut could be used at both slow and fast?
Yeah, the synthesizer, this was very common. A lot of the sounds in games, if you slow them down, they turn out to be public domain tunes. If you ever were to do that, you know, you play right backwards and you hear, Bally sucks. But whatever. But yeah, it's very similar. They had the sounds programmed in, and you could play them back at any tempo, any compression you want, and you could turn a sound into something completely unrecognizable.
Thank you.
While you're talking about the speech that went into the game, I've got something that Tom, you may not be aware of, but I think round about the time XENON was being developed, you got a new secretary, is that correct? Young lady goes by the name of Andy? Okay, well Andy Sucre is now Andy Faris. She married Greg Faris. And from her, she tells me that she just started as Bally as Tom's secretary. And one of the first jobs she had to do as a secretary was take dictation. And somehow she had to find a way of recording on paper all the oohs and ahs that were going to be passed to Suzanne to go into the machine. And at that stage, she wondered what crazy kind of a business she got into, and she wasn't sure if it was something she wanted to stay at. Okay.
That wasn't the worst I saw.
Tom, actually, Andy asked me, she thought that you might have done that on purpose.
As sort of a test.
As a test, right, for the new girl.
So we've got time for one or
Oh,
two
yeah,
more
I got
questions.
Mostly, Paul, this game actually was loaned to us by Rob Hoffman, who's back there. And by the way, I want to thank him for that. It's a good-looking example. But it's fitted, at least in the back glass, with color-changing LEDs. And I'm curious from an art standpoint, and maybe design standpoint, what you guys think of the newer things that have been put into games like that.
I know I like the package. I haven't seen it for a while, so just the package was very was nice to see again. So, but where are you talking about that? Oh yeah. Interesting. I never want to mess with the artwork, but I think that's an interesting touch. And I like it. I mean, the whole idea, as you can tell, was to add as much glitter into the game and as much attention-grabbing information as we could. So that was why with all the lighting that was created there, was trying to create this dazzling effect. But nicely done. This package is beautiful. It's a restored package. It's beautiful.
This is for all of you. Can we know where you're at now? You know, where do you work? What do you do now? Where are they now?
Okay, well, I'm working on computers and working in radio, ham radio.
I'm still a computer engineer. When I got married, my wife made me go out and get a real job.
Superstar.
Nothing's changed.
In 2002, I went back into education, which I started out at before I went to Bally. And I still do artwork, but I have it's the most wonderful experience in the world working with young kids and sort of being the magician that can share all these tricks with these young kids who are very interested in doing artwork. And I'm the department chairman for 2 large high schools south of here in New Lenox, Illinois. And I plan to do this until I get tired of it, and so far it's been wonderful. So it's been a great experience.
I left Chicago 20 years ago. I moved out to Las Vegas, went back to work for Bally out there, and then since today I'm vice president of global marketing for a firm called JCM Global. It's a Japanese-owned company and it provides all the currency validation, transaction monitoring software. It's all getting cash in and out of a casino in the quickest, most efficient way, and the most secure way.
Okay, thanks for that. Greg, I think you've got something you want to say.
As a final point, I want to bring up the fact that although we mentioned the game going from a Whitewood to the art department to Suzanne through Al, this seems to me to be the first example of what we now call a team concept game. Prior to this, the designers would design a game, give it to the art department, and it was a very quick turnaround, very quick way to get a game onto the market. Because at that point, the game, we were making several models a year, so we needed a quick turnaround. But this being a team concept game, probably the first one that I run across, the Whitewood was done by me, and then the artwork was done by Paul, and Al got involved, changing it to multi-ball. Thank goodness Suzanne got involved and put the final touches on the game. I appreciate all the effort of everybody that contributed to the game. But especially, I want to say one last thing. From being at Bally, say from the mid-70s to the mid-80s, the 2 most important people at Bally weren't Greg Kmiec or Jim Patla. The 2 most important people at Bally, and it shows because they started the team game concept, were Tom Nieman and Paul Faris.
I'd like to end by thanking Greg Kmiec for giving us the game design, Allan for the technology and the multi-ball, Paul for the stunning artwork, Tom for bringing it all together and making it happen, and the voice of Suzanne Ciani, the voice of XENON.
Good.